understand. Is it? All right, let's be gentle with Jen here. All right, here you go, Jen.
Thank you. That's hard to follow up. I have it written down here, so hopefully I won't mess it up. Can you hear me? There we go. First and foremost, before I go into much more, I want to stop and take a minute to recognize those survivors who fought this fight and left this world true warriors. They spend their days fighting a demon that sadly takes more than 1,500 lives each and every day in the U.S. alone. Personally, I have lost many wonderful friends and even family to cancer. 20 years ago, on this very day, I came home from school to learn that my Nana had died of cancer. I was just 13. I can never imagine the pain my dad felt losing his mother, but I do hope that this day will now have a place in his heart forever as a day of inspiration and a day of hope. First and foremost, I am sorry for the cards. When I say I still have a bit of chemo brain, this is probably one of the only times I don't have to explain what that is. So, thank you. Now, what was I saying? On to my story. Last year, at the age of 32, I was diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer. I did a self-exam and found a lump and went to the doctor to get it checked out. That decision alone probably saved my life. I remember those words, "You've got cancer," like it happened just minutes ago. I remember the first thing I thought of. I don't have time for cancer. I haven't even cooked dinner yet today. I have a husband, I have 2 little kids, and preschool and dance and taekwondo and a million other things moms just like me do on a daily basis. How in the world am I going to be able to do this? The answer is, you just do. My parents were some of the first people I told that I had cancer. My dad's words stayed with me to even this very day. He said, "Jen, this seems like the impossible because everything is all still in front of you. You have to start putting things in the rearview mirror." So I did just that. Soon after, I had a double mastectomy and started on my path for chemo. I remember asking my husband about finding an oncologist here in Rolla. I knew PCRNC had everything I needed from start to finish for my treatment, but I personally didn't know any of the oncologists we had. We talked it over, and I decided Dr. Bond was my man. A very long time. I imagine he's seen every possible case there was, and I would be in the best of hands. That decision was one of the best I ever made, and I thank you. When we met for the first time, I was in no mood to be there, quite honestly. I was angry, I was ticked off, I even had a shirt on that said "Cancer Sucks" in big letters across the front. Wow, what that man was about to walk into in that patient room, he will never know. I remember a lovely woman who came in the room with me as well, and she just sat in the corner and barely said a word. I had no idea why she was there. She just sat quietly and took notes, and she listened. Later on, I would find out that she was my nurse navigator, Carol. Where's Carol? Carol! How truly valuable she was for me to get through this journey I was so scared to be a part of. Dr. Bond and his nurses, in my eyes, are some of the best around. They allow their patients to live in the moment of what they are feeling and be supportive of that. The day we first met, I was angry over this whole ordeal, and they said that was perfectly okay. I was allowed to be. Later on, through the process of treatment, I looked at each appointment as an opportunity to brighten their day in some small way. What a task they have. Some of the highest of highs I imagine in that office, and oftentimes some of the lowest of lows. So whether it was a joke or a smart-ass response to something, I would get them to laugh, and in turn, I would laugh too. Oh, how many times did Dr. Vaughn open that patient door and ask me how I was doing, and I would say, "Doc, I have cancer. How do you think I'm doing?" And he would let out a giggle. At my last appointment, I talked a little bit about how nervous I was to get up and speak today. So he says, "Do you know who Jim Valvano is?" I, of course, said no. And he said, "He's Italian." And I said, "It's not like we all know each other." He laughed and began to tell me a story about his inspirational speech he gave in 1993. Mind you, I was 13 at the time. Well, he received an ESPY award nearly 6 weeks before he died of cancer. The story and speech were amazing, but more than that, it showed how caring my oncologist was. He wanted to settle my fear by apparently finding one of the most inspirational speeches on cancer of all time. No pressure. I will end by saying this. Cancer is most often a journey you do not take alone. Seemingly everyone around you is impacted in some way, whether it is your kids, your spouse, your friends, your in-laws, everyone. Even more, your doctors and nurses that eventually become like family to you, and you see them sometimes more often. They are all part of the reason you are one day called a survivor. So to everyone here today who has been on this journey in some way, or somehow on behalf of survivors everywhere, I say thank you. And in the words of the great Italian Jim Valvano, I will end by saying just as he did. Cancer can take away all my physical abilities. It cannot touch my mind, it cannot touch my heart, and it cannot touch my soul. And those three things are going to carry on forever. Thank you.